The adventure of a lifetime and the excitement continues live from the Mobian stage here in Burbank, California. I'm Louis Tucci with the ZBrush Summit 2022, and now the moment of truth is upon us. I'm here with my compatriot and friend, fellow ZBrush master at arms, Paul Gabory. We have the moment as the book is open and the saga unfolds. Fresh off the foothills of a stellar release, it is a global phenomenon at this point. It is played the world over by countless many. We have the team from God of War, Sony Santa Monica, with us live in the studio. Sitting to my right, Della Longfish and Angela Rico to start the action off live here in the studio, and we're going to be taking it away with what promises to be. They're smashing the like button somewhere. I can hear it. The keys are smashing across the universe. And we're going to have a remote in from Rafael Grassetti.
Yes.
The Brazilian bad boy himself will be tuning in live from the mothership, as I like to call it, the Brazil. Josiah Scholten is going to join us as well, and Andrew Aritza, and we are going to be taking it, and in a moment we are going to take you into the world of God of War, so sit tight and it's going to go live. Paul Gabory, we're back, and there they are. We have none other than Della Longfish. Wave to the people at home and around the universe. They're tuning in from the moon. We've got Angela Rico. And online, there he is, a face, a familiar face in a different place. How are you, my friend, Rafael Grassetti? I miss you already.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
We're
happy to be here. We're going to try to make this work.
So it's been a successful launch.
Congratulations.
Yes, high five, Paul Gabory. I got to touch somebody.
Yes. Killed it.
Team.
You guys killed it. Tens everywhere.
What's your favorite number? 10.
Yeah.
Wait, what's the number
Can we
of the
get
day?
an 11, please?
What's
Can I
the
get a
number of
bonus
the day?
point?
Wait for the number of the day. You ready for this? You remember when you were a kid, Sesame Street? They go,
yeah.
10.
You want a smiley face sticker too? A little gold star?
I'm just going to keep saying it. Ding, ding. Ring.
Seriously, congratulations to the whole team, and hats off, man.
Thank you.
The camera operators are trying to clap their feet. I mean, it's off the hook in here.
No, thanks. It's been a wild week, and it's great that we're having Rafa all the way from Brazil to kind of represent, and Rafa will let you take it away, but it's great that the team gets to show a little bit of the work that they've been doing on the characters. And it's been a whirlwind for us. The reception from the critics and fans has been fantastic. So we're really happy to be here.
Yeah, like I said, a global phenomenon at this point, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's really exciting.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, so you guys got a lot to share, so we'll share your screen so we can start letting you see everything that you want to share, and then I'll let you guys take it from there. And we're going to be having, like Louis said, a couple more other artists from the team joining us later on a little bit, but.
And questions coming in online from.
I'll do my best to funnel questions where I can.
190.
Yeah, we'll do our best to answer them in a way.
A billion viewers are waiting to ask you a bunch of things, so take it away without.
Take it away.
Spoiler warning.
So we are not talking about any story stuff here. The focus is on the work that the character team's been doing over the last few years under the guidance of Eric Valdez and obviously the art direction of Raf. So no story stuff, but there may be a few characters that you haven't seen. So I know a lot of our fans are trying to really keep it all there for the experience themselves. So nothing major by any means, no story stuff, but just a heads up if you want to come back and watch this after you played the full game. Raf, you want to take it away, my man?
That was a great public service announcement you just made. So if you're listening and you're watching, there is a spoiler warning that you may see some characters. If you haven't played the game yet, you haven't gone down to the store and got the game or haven't downloaded the game, beware. Take it away.
Yeah, Raf, if you just want to open up a little bit.
Raf.
I'm sorry, I can't really hear Della that well.
Okay.
Okay. But
Okay, well,
I'm just
we'll
gonna
be his voice.
Yep. He said, "Go ahead, take it away."
It's all you.
It's all you now.
All right, we're gonna make this work. Well, let's just say, I know you guys mentioned about the spoiler, and it's a big team, right, that works on this, and we're just here representing the crew, and we're gonna show. I think I'm gonna have to run through some of the stuff fairly quickly because we have a lot of stuff to share. So let's do this, Della. Wait, now I can see the screen, but
Yeah, they're showing you full screen. There you go.
there you go. Beautiful. Let's go.
All right. So, Raf, I don't know if you want to just talk about coming off of 2018. This is a cast.
Yeah, exactly. So 2018, I got, hope all you guys play the game. But we did a lot of work to develop the world, reboot the franchise and build all the characters. We started touching on all the factions and, really build the universe. Like we ended up doing a lot of work that we didn't expect on 2018. But coming into Ragnarok, like we knew that we had to expand the cast, expand the universe, expand all the realms, expand, all the enemies, the heroes, companions, everything. So since the beginning, we took a step back and really started to break down the factions a little bit better. So when we expanded in terms of color palette, in terms of detail, that everything felt cohesive in the universe. So, if you haven't seen a lot of the work that we did on 2018, like this is just some of the cast members that we did.
Yeah, and then one thing I think that early on in development when we left 2018, it was received really well, and we were really happy with the cast that we did. We found out right away that it would just be a sequel, that the saga of Ragnarok would be concluding in this sequel. So on the character side, on the concept as well as the modeling team, that meant everything was on the board. Everything we wanted to do was fair game to be there in the cast, and this was our opportunity under the direction of Raph, and then working closely with Eric Valdez and his team to really push it from all angles on this, because this was going to be it for us, so we wanted to make sure everything was in there.
And the results speak volumes.
Yeah, Eric, if you're watching, we miss you.
Yeah,
love you, man.
Absolutely.
And Raph, I can go to the next slide too if you want to just talk a little about the art direction stuff as we went into this. If you want to go for that.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that we did 2018, we kept, like Della said, was continuation, right? We're continuing the story. We're continuing like all the races and the characters. So some of the things that we always look for in the art direction side of things is mixing, right, the Norse mythology, which is, kind of the base of what we're doing. And then one thing that we talk about is historical detail. We always look at artifacts, details from, anything historical that we can find. Norse mythology doesn't have a lot of stuff out there besides just the kind of the public or the entertaining stuff that has been done, but we try to go in and look for, real artifacts and things that we can pull from. And obviously like the classical fantasy, which is what we're trying to pull from 80s movies, like that feeling of, fantastical, like we're trying to get that, even on the smaller characters throughout the whole cast, right? Like trying to get the feeling of fantasy, like children book, like really going in a journey and getting kind of lost in the universe. So that combined is what we call mythical realism. And we did that on 2018. It was a very good formula for us to really make sure everything, was feeling right, was feeling cohesive within, the franchise coming from the past games. And, Ragnarok was a little bit easier for us to continue building upon that, but still a lot of work. And you guys are going to see like some of the work that goes behind this. And we can always check on these, the pillars to make sure things feel correct for our franchise.
Yeah, and this was, like Raph said, this is something on 2018 we developed as a style guide and basically an art direction Bible that we could give to the artists that were there or anyone coming onto the team, so we minimized kind of the ramp-up time, but also got, a big part of what Raph is looking at is the cohesiveness across, Ragnarok, across the 2018 game and across both games, and this gave a way that we could use a shorthand. The nice thing about these pillars is it's not all 30%, we lean into a little bit here, a little bit there. But it really helps establish the look, because there's a great art, but I think the thing that Raph's always looking for is to make sure that it fits for the game, the world, the narrative aesthetic that he was going for with this.
It's good for artists coming into the project as well, right? Like when first things that people usually do is go into the classic Norse things that has been done, like, the Marvels or like even just more books, and we always kind of push back and use the pillars to give feedback and make sure people are kind of filtering their their references and things like that.
Yeah, like Raph said, one of the interesting things we're trying to get the historical detail in there, which you want this believable world with these fantastic characters. We have the fantasy and the historical side. Coming off the Greek saga, it was nice. There was a few more stuff to pull from. Viking, like Raph said, not as much, a lot of stuff built of wood, so we kind of had to take what we could, look at what way they traditionally did stuff to really get that look. Then one thing we'll typically go into too, just to give you an overview of how we start to concept this right before it goes to the modeling team. This is a little bit of our process. Every concept starts with a kickoff, and usually that is sitting with Raph, Eric Valdez, our directors from gameplay and narrative, and really going into what they want. A lot of times we'll start off with a write-up, a bio, a narrative bio, as well as a combat bio as well. From there, once we get the kind of broad direction, the artists just jump in, start grabbing some research and reference, kind of marinating themselves in the subject matter. And from there, start doing some really quick and loose ideations and thumbnails What we're trying to do, especially dealing with mythology, which is kind of an abstract themes and visuals sometimes, we just go for it. Let's see what we can do, and really kind of exhaust everything and make sure we've turned over every rock. At this point, this is something that we can show to Raph and the directors who have a good visual eye and can see the shorthand, because a lot of times it doesn't look at all what it will look like in the final game, but when that's working, we'll move to comps. And the nice thing about that is it starts to validate the designs in the ideation process and see if it actually works and what we had kind of thought of was working. Again, as we go through a review after that and things are working, we'll sync with the necessary departments and then we'll move into a final. And that's really just polishing everything. What we'll do at this point too is provide model sheets, turnarounds, and reference packets as we hand it off.
The one thing I want to bring up, and it's something that me and Della, since we started in the studio, we've been trying to implement into the pipeline, is the use of 3D, right, for these phases. And it helps a lot with the process for testing things in game. So a lot of the things that we try to test in game, we usually do a quick gray mesh. Like you see a lot of my work kind of evolved into kind of quick sketches to test out, proportions and things in game, that then we do paint overs on top. So the process kind of moves a little faster when we're doing that kind of stuff because people can see it in game, and then we can keep working. So we usually do a gray mesh, which is kind of the initial block out of the model, and we hand it off that to rigging and animation so they can play out with the poses and try out how the character moves and really start playing with the rig. And then that's the phase that they give feedback the most. And ZBrush obviously helps a lot with that because we can quickly sketch out a model and then do a quick retopo and send it off to rigging. And then while that's happening is kind of what Della was describing. Like we do a lot of then exploration, paint overs, go deeper into details, really flesh out the design while animation is playing out with the rig, because that's the phase where they can have a lot of input. Because after that, when things get locked down, we all know how long it takes to do some of these characters. So we don't want to have a lot of back and forth and spend the time changing things down the line. We really try to lock that down early on, and that's when ZBrush is the most our tool to make that happen. So
you're kind of doing 3D concept in the beginning in a way.
Yeah, we're doing a mix, and a lot of it sometimes is we can hand even a loose sketch, and we'll get a block out real quick, almost like a ZBrush sketch, and we can kind of paint over that. We want to make sure that we don't miss anything in the 2D that can't translate into the 3D and the final design of the character. And like Raph says, we're trying to troubleshoot everything that we've learned through experience that could be a hurdle. So we want to try and address it as early as we can. It doesn't always work, but if we can get most of it at that stage, it just saves us time.
Yeah, good fusion process there.
Yeah, then to Raph's point, working with Eric and his team, a lot of collaboration, This doesn't happen without a team of people coming at it from every angle. So that's something I really like, the chemistry on the team that Raph's set up. Has a really good working relationship, which is huge in games.
Yes.
This is a great slide. He's really showing you guys everyone behind the scenes.
That's the business. That's the business. The business.
And this is the great thing is this is an overall. This is kind of, we can rely on this process. There's timelines and things we have to deal with. So this can be expanded or condensed into an hour, depending on how fast we need a design and concept. But at least we have a base that everyone understands, so we can evaluate it from this.
I know it's not pretty artwork, but it's an important slide.
I'm taking screenshots as I speak. I mean, are you kidding me?
We have 400 more. So.
Oh, you have 400 more. Let's go.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Travis said, "Stop talking, Paul."
Right on. So we can just hop into the cast for God of War Ragnarok, and starting out with our main man here.
Boy.
The big boy.
Yeah, Kratos. I know we coming out from 2018, the amount of work that we put into this character was insane at the beginning. So we knew that we needed to almost redo him from scratch, since we're talking, kind of cross-gen and what's next for him. So very early, I sat down with Eric and we started to resculpt the, Kratos from ground up. This is some of the work that we also did on the costume. We wanted to keep the iconic costume that he had, but also doing a new take from what happened on the story. Some of how we could improve the sculpt, how we can improve the low res, because we had some limitations last game that we could push on Ragnarok. So there's some the early sketches from Jose Cabrera as well, because he did a lot of work early on Kratos with myself and Bella. It's always fun to work on this guy.
Yeah, and again, with the concepts that we started working through them is really seeing the effect of Thimble Winter on the characters, so you get to see a little bit more. They're a little more covered up, but still trying to retain, like Raph said, those iconic elements that made the character so good from the first game. And then themes that Raph and I and Eric had talked about is really kind of bringing in what we had in 2018 is Kratos represented by the bear and Atreus the wolf, given a coat, which felt like it was good in the wintertime, also helped us to push that silhouette and get that feeling of a bear for Kratos.
Yeah, we were not going to do another game with him not wearing a cloak, because we really tried to push that on the last game.
Yeah. That's a fun thing, too. A lot of the ideas that were generated in the first game found a place in Ragnarok. This is work by Jose Cabrera. Great thing about Jose is we really try and understand the costuming work. So you can see here, like, he'll even design things in layers to make sure that as we go through, it actually kind of makes sense. Again, that's a little bit of where that historical detail comes in. We want that fantastic with the believable, so it kind of grounds the characters and then allows us to really push the creative freedom throughout the game.
Yeah, you're going to see that as a theme throughout the presentation. A lot of like making sure things make sense and how they're fabricated, all the details and materials that we always use. Like we always try to make it feel like it belongs to the place where they're living. Like here, in the story, they're just trying to survive in Midgard. So a lot of the materials that they can use is basically what they can pull from. Same thing on the story. They're kind of makeshifting their armor. So we didn't want to go crazy and make like this crazy armor where it wouldn't make sense that Kratos made that. So a lot of those elements is just storytelling and the details and the materials that we're using. And same thing here, like you see a theme between Kratos and Atreus, like, well, we try to keep coming from the last game, like what's iconic for them. So, his armor was very iconic in terms of like the half shoulder pad, showing off the tattoo, like all the iconic elements, the skirt that made his design, recognizable. Like you're going to see that here and you're going to see that with Atreus as well.
Yeah, we'll go through a lot of design details too to work things out. So this is just an example, just even things on the leggings and stuff, how much is too far. We'll explore all that. And like Raph said, the storytelling element with our team is great. We work with a great narrative team. And the idea is this has been 3 years without the Holder brothers. So Kratos and Atreus have been making their costumes in the meantime.
The guy looks like me with no hair.
Yeah, here you can clearly see like what some of the collaboration is from like the 2D, 3D concept that you mentioned, Paul. Like some of the stuff here, I did a very quick model without worrying too much about construction at this point. And this is something that usually people ask, and it's a little bit confusing if you're starting. But for you to make a character like this ready for the game and completely fleshed out, it takes a long time to sculpt something like this for production. Where the things that I'm doing, it's a lot more sketching out the overall proportions, like getting all the shapes blocked out. And you can quickly do that in ZBrush, like within a couple of days, you could, kind of block something out. And then I'll do a render. And then in Photoshop, I try to bring in a lot of texture detail, a lot of the texture kind of wear and tear, and really kind of flesh out the concept in 2D at that point. In ZBrush, only, the 3D aspect of it only works as an initial block out. And then, whoever takes it to final definitely needs to go back and pretty much scratch everything that I do and just use it as an overall guide, because a lot of the detail that needs to be made for a game like we're making, it's very intricate and it needs to be very well polished so everything holds up in the low res. So a lot of the work that you see from the team, like what Angela's going to show and Josiah and Andrew and Eric work on this presentation, it's like taking it to final. Like that work takes like a month, 2 months, like a lot of time just to get it there. So here's just a quick example on Kratos. Like I want to get that out of the way because I want you guys to understand the separation of what the work really is. And this is my quick concept, 2D, 3D concept of Kratos for us to get things approved. And like Della said, the collaboration, the back and forth really helps us to get things moving. When people see this, there's a big buy-in of like, this is going to work. Materials feel correct, even though the final looks different. In terms of polish level, like this is a good way for us to get things approved.
Thanks for demystifying that, because there's a lot of misconceptions I think that people might have. They think, oh, look, it's just a quick thing, and your breakdown of the process, professionally speaking, is warranted and valued. Thank you so much.
Well, Raph's quick sculpting is completely different than anybody else's, I'd like to point out, right? Raph's quick sculpting. Here's a whole character in a day. Like, you're good. So you guys re-sculpted him for this one?
Yeah.
Completely?
Yeah, so Eric did a lot of the work of the sculpting early on. Like we couldn't go back and completely redo the low res because we already had a lot of the facial animation or kind of facial shapes that we didn't want to redo. A lot of the kind of there's some animations with the rage mode and things like that we wanted to keep based on UVs. So that we try to preserve so we didn't have to go back and redo, because that takes a lot of time, kind of like 6 months to a year to get all that fleshed out. So But the sculpt side of things, like we went back and resculpt his face, resculpt the details. The armor is completely from scratch. Eric redid his legs, redid the whole armor set. But on the body, which I think is the more iconic and important part, because that carries over throughout all the upgrades, that we did a lot of work on. We did the eyes, we redid the beard. So a lot of work went into that, which is really fun. Like when we get to work on these characters, especially Kratos, like we want to spend the time to make him feel next gen, right? Like kind of the next step for him. And I think the work that we put in, having a base to start from, like it was really helpful, because then we could push and fix things that we didn't like on the last project. There was a lot of things that bothered me when after we shipped, and we got a chance to kind of really fix that. You can see the amount of detail that Eric put in. And if you see my early sketch, you'd be like night and day. Like this is the, very, very well polished. A lot of the stitching was kind of handmade, and really taking the time to make sure everything feels natural. You see a little bit of the imperfections on the stitching and how it kind of damaged the leather as you're making it. We really wanted to make it feel like Kratos could have put this together based on the things that he had. And you can, kind of get this sense of with the leather treatment and all the details.
And that's one thing, Raph, I love that you and Eric looked at too, is just getting the frequency of detail. It's easy to really go in and add too much. I think deciding where we want those elements to pop and where we want kind of avoids it getting noisy, which is, a nice subtlety that's added to it from a design point of view that I think helps kind of with all the stuff under the hood to get that final design in there.
Most definitely. You can jump to the next one though. We can show a little bit more of the in-game stuff. And you can see this clearly, the amount of detail that was put into this model is kind of crazy from Eric's side. And props to him, because he likes to really spend the time in making these things perfect.
Yep, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really looking tight.
When we go to the low res, like I said, like we try to preserve a lot of the setup that we had last game. Kratos has a lot of armor upgrades. So the things, how we break it down, like the upper torso is like one set. Then we have one set for the arms, one set for the waist. And when I say set, it's UV sets, so you guys can kind of think about how textures were made. And one set for the legs as well. So there's a lot of, we could play and a lot of detail that we can put on these sculpts to make things look as good as we possibly can. And then on top of that, we do a lot of tiling with materials and details. And you will see, I know the crew is going to talk about some of that on the other characters. But, a lot of the work went into this big guy. And Angela, you can talk about some of the textures.
Eric Valdez did the textures for Kratos. I helped him out with some of the textures for the armor sets. But just trying to keep all that detail that he put into the base mess and carry it on all the armor sets was, great learning experience. I got to learn from Eric, who did this amazing work. So it was a lot of fun.
And you see some of the work that Angie's going to show also in the next characters, like a lot of the work done in Substance and some crazy stuff. For Kratos, I mean, we try to put as much detail as we possibly can, but like Bella said, we always try to balance out the frequency of details, like how much we want to dirty him up. When we're working with PBR and a lot of the base materials, we try to keep them as clean sometimes as we have to, because things read a little bit different in game. But you can see here, there's a lot of time spent on the leather, kind of the difference of the values of the leather to make sure all the layering feels visible, because there's a lot of detail going on, and we want to try to represent as much as possible. You can see here on the beard, like the beard was completely redone based on last game. We try to make it a little more fuller and we could afford more cards this time around. So I did some work on that as well to make sure the glorious beard felt next gen.
our beard tag. No, and it was one thing too. I think Angela was really nice too. Like some of that pattern work is kind of played down within the values in there too, and then the material breakup and all that attention to detail. It's subtlety, but you get the variety in it without it being too noisy or splitting the eye, because I think once we get to this stage too, we look at how we can kind of compose the character where we want you to look first, second, and third, and keep that up, and that's all the work.
And it's cool because you can get to see Kratos from the camera behind, like you don't always see him up close, you do sometimes, but as you're playing, he's a little bit farther, and those details need to stand out and have a lot of contrast so they pop.
Yeah, I think when we're lucky, a character will be the size of your hand on screen. So making sure that holds up. And like you said, we'll probably see our main character from the back more than the front.
Yeah, the shoulders.
One good thing about gray meshing, like we talked early on, is that we can really get a sense of how things are looking for from just the initial blockout in game. But then when you get to the finals, like you get everything, perfect, as close as you can possibly get because of photo mode and all the cinematics. We use the same models in game for cinematics, so we don't have that any difference on that. So all our models hold up with tiling, textures, and all that stuff. And it's funny because even the team sometimes look at the gray mesh and be like, "Oh, this looks amazing. It's final." And we're like, "No, it's not." Like if you spend the time, like we need to make these things perfect. But again, like that step of us getting a gray mesh in really unblocks the team to keep moving. It's just a little bit more on Kratos. Let's get a sense of all the cool stuff.
And then moving to Atreus, we had some other really fun design stuff that we were looking at with him. We wanted to see a lot of growth on this character. It's been 3 years, and he's been growing during Thimblewinter, so a lot more change in his design. We wanted to bring a level of confidence. And like with any main character, a lot of work goes into it. If you get the art book, you can see more of this, but these are just some examples. Here's some early sketches by Stephen Oakley. Some stuff at this stage, obviously playing up the wolf theme, getting a little more confidence kind of in the character. Then another artist that we had, Vance Kovacs, did some work too.
Nice.
This reflects a little bit more of the idea and the effect of the costuming of Thimblewinter. Like we had with Kratos, he's a little more covered up. Some of these explorations also kind of imagined if he's going a little bit more towards his father, we added some bulk and stuff to the character. And Vance was even putting in, any narrative stuff that we can pick from mythology, and the story is great. There's a rooster that's supposed to, in the mythology, signal Ragnarok as well. So we added some of those rooster feathers in there and all those elements. One thing we want to do, like with all the characters, is just make sure that we do a pretty valid exploration of it. And then the choices that we have kind of bring them into what the final is.
So I know Vance is a ZBrush. Did he only do 2D stuff for you guys, or did he actually end up doing something?
No, Vance is a real great example of the combination of both. Vance is working that out. He did a lot of stuff with the Valkyries last game and how things could articulate and all that.
He's
too,
awesome.
So,
he's beautiful.
But that's also working in collaboration with Eric and his team. And I think having that understanding with the back and forth as we talk about characters as they move forward is really good, because none of it is designed in isolation, and we want to keep that conversation going. Small things too, just even like hair studies. How do we want that to evolve? Something that feels a little more confident. We are going with more neutral, natural palettes, but we still wanted to bring in the yellow because that represented his mother. And then this is a concept I did, and we started to dial it in here. Some of the influences that came into this design is we wanted a lower profile costume to go with the more agile, nimble feeling with Atreus that we've always had. He still has the wolf fur from the original game. And one thing thematically that we had talked about with Atreus on 2018 is he has a yellow scarf from his mother and then also a red sash from his father, and it was about equal in that game. And now that he's growing, and he's got the lineage with the Norse, you can start to see the yellow coming out forward a lot more in his design. So that connection is supposed to be there. And then once we have something like this, or we'll also add the smaller details, like for anyone who played the 2018 game, the mistletoe arrow, which had helped in the final battle. He's still carrying as a kind of signal of good luck.
It is a good example what Della was bringing up. A lot of, from this stage, we were doing a lot of sketches in 3D as well to see kind of what felt good. Like we put it in the game, make sure it kind of feels correct. And we're showing here kind of like some examples, but we do a lot of work to get to this point. Some of the things that Della brought up, like with the skirt, we did a breakdown. Kratos was a little bit easier because his design is very iconic to what we wanted to bring into Ragnarok. But for Atreus, we had to, kind of do a little bit of a breakdown and explain to people like what things we wanted to carry over for his design to be iconic. So kind of the cross on the chest was, something that we decided to keep from last game. Kind of the Spartan skirt on his waist, and then like Della said, the mother's scarf on his neck, and these iconic things like is what we started to build even on upgrades as we these characters change. We really want to make very clear to the public what Atreus represents, and things that when you break him down into simple shapes, what are the things that we need to keep to make sure he feels iconic. And you can even see some of the details that Della added, which was really, really cool. It was like the Kratos' tattoo on his arm, and starting to really represent a little bit of the father into the design. And And we did that a little bit on the scars on his face last game. And I think this starts to kind of connect them a little bit more within the family. It's pretty cool. And then again, same process here. Like I did an initial sketch, and even the one before was a little bit of a combination between myself and Eric, a little back and forth, where Eric would spend a little more time. You know, I'll get the models, tweak some stuff, send it back. So we really try to make the process very fluid, and I'm very thankful for the team, because that's, you know, I think that's why, you know, our things look so good, is because nobody owns a certain character. Like if anybody wants to get it and give feedback and kind of send it back and forth, we really kind of, you know, push this collaboration, because I feel like it really makes our characters look better. And this is the kind of prime example of Eric's work on Atreus. There's a ton of work that went into this to make everything feel like the layering is, it makes sense, that everything feels like he's wearing it. Like we even had a cosplayer come to the studio last week, and was talking to me and Della, and she was saying like how hard it was to get all the layering down, because there's so much going on. And we try to sell that with, like, you know, kind of the weather and what he would be wearing. Even the leather on his chest is kind of like flipped of the kind of a pelt, right? So you get the fur coming off of like pockets of it. Again, looking at reference, looking at things that will make sense for where they're, you know, they're living and they're trying to survive. Like we look a lot at that stuff. Again, that's kind of the historical detail and how people would dress up, you know, in kind of northern countries and things like that, to make sense. Everything to make sense and feel like, you know, these characters really exist, and things that they're making is not just to look cool, even though Atreus is like, we can play and have a little more fun because he's kind of a teenager. We want him to look cool because, you know, Kratos is very much like the big guy, and, you know, his stuff is a lot more practical. We had some fun with him to make sure he felt kind of, you know, a little more stylish in his choices there. Again,
It's
all
just,
the crazy details. Go for it.
More of the design work too, and I was working closely with Raf and Eric on this, and we'll also have weekly syncs where we talk about the director feedback, stuff that they did like and that wasn't hitting the mark. So when we hand off a character in design, when it goes to 3D, it's not just given a cold piece of concept art. They understand the direction and all those elements. So you know, that was in office and working closely with Eric when he was doing all this stuff, and I think me and Eric and Raf too all feel like proud parents, like Kratos. This is our baby boy here is doing good, and
just years working on this.
Yeah, and you know,
a
lot of attention to detail, and you know, there's a point on a concept where we hand it off, but it's in such good hands as it goes forward. They're understanding, because when things come where it's cuts or edits that we need to kind of be aware of, the changes that Eric and Raf do are 100% in line with the direction of where it's going. So each step actually makes the characters better, and you know, this one took a lot of love from the team.
Yeah, I think even when you guys continue this franchise, what you guys are doing, what Raf's saying, you guys sharing stuff, right? You guys, that team will just keep going the right path, the right direction.
And that's a big thing, I think, that's helped with, you know, Eric and Raf and myself and all the other departments too. At Foster in the studio, when we've learned to work the best and try and kind of create that environment as best we can. So it maximizes the artist's output.
Yeah, it definitely showcases that it's more than one person to make a cultural phenomenon like this. I mean, it's celebrated.
100%. I think in my experience too, I think some of the strongest design work, not just on this, but other projects I see, have been through collaboration. Those are some of the strongest designs.
Well, the scores online is saying enough for what you guys have done. Seriously.
You can clearly see on the Atreus, like the attention that we put into make sure things feel like there's proper attention to how he's wearing, so everything doesn't feel super stiff. You know, like a lot of that, I feel like it's what makes a lot of difference when we go into like more of these complicated characters, that we try to make sure, you know, kind of stitching feels correct, that it has the correct scale. You know, there's tension to where he's wrapping things around, but then we can kind of play up with volume where it's not. So especially when we're dealing with Norse and the stuff that we have to play with, like we can't really put a lot of metals on these characters, especially at the beginning. So the use of cloth and the separation between the elements are very important. And when people are looking at their own scopes, like I feel like that's kind of kind of a step when you go into paying attention to how things are fabricated and how things should fit together. Look at scans and things like that. Like it definitely helps. Let's keep going. Again, for Atreus, we had the initial face from 2018 from Sony, which was a scan. This time around, like we resculpted the face, so we got a new skin from Sony, and I did a lot of work trying to find the correct balance because Sony also is very different from Atreus, but also being the actor, I started to blend in percentage-wise, like how much we wanted his aging to affect Atreus's aging. So that was a lot of back and forth to really get the correct face. Because when you look at 2018, even myself working on that game for so many years, like you have an idea of what Atreus looks like, but once you go down into like making the face, is like there's a lot of nuances to the design of his face, different from what Sony used to look like. So here was again sitting down and kind of playing up with how much we wanted to age him. So yeah, we resculpted the face. The eyes are all completely new from last game. We got new shaders and everything.
Even just like some of the pattern work and stuff that you would kind of helped out on here too.
A little bit.
Yeah, but no, I think that really came into it too, just that attention to detail in that work and everything.
Yeah, and like all the work that Eric did in the texturing became kind of like the staple, like what we were shooting for with the other characters, the stuff that he did with Kratos and Atreus, just we're looking at constantly so we can reach the same quality so that they all would be cohesive.
Mm-hmm. How are we looking on time?
I think we're doing good about it.
You're doing good.
Yeah. It's all
Doing good?
We're doing good.
Let's do it.
All right. Rep, I can actually, do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah. So I got to do one of the armor sets that Atreus gets. I was really inspired by the armor sets that Andrew and Bernardo were sculpting for Kratos and Atreus. This one, it was a cool challenge because we usually tend to sculpt our characters with the arms down, like in a more relaxed pose as opposed to the A pose. This lets Raf see how the character is going to feel in game instead of it being too stiff. And then once he approves it, then we go ahead and move the arms up a little bit and then clean up the armpit area to get the better bakes. And then ultimately take him to the A pose for rigging in the low poly. The challenge with this one was that the shoulder pieces were so round and they fit nice when his arms are down, but then when I had to pull them up, they started distorting. So it was fun to play around with that shape to make it feel good when when his arms are moving, and also making sure that the hook in his back fits around it because the hook needs to stay in that place throughout all the armor sets because that's where his bow goes. And then also another thing I like to look at when sculpting is making sure that all the layers interact with each other. So for example, on the far right image, the back, you can see a little highlight on the belt because the metal in the back is pushing it forward. So you really want that interaction of elements pushing and pulling each other so that they feel grounded and it just feels more realistic.
Yeah, I love that attention to detail, and I think this turned out beautiful. Like I said, it always feels good when it's going over the good modeling team under the direction of everyone and the result.
The next slide. So another thing we gotta watch out for when sculpting for games is making sure that nothing is at a 90-degree angle. You want to make sure you have bevels and everything's at an angle so that it bakes correctly, or else the bake is going to be pretty much non-existent. We also make sure that things are watertight so the low poly can bake correctly. It was a lot of fun, doing like all the little scales on his torso, just moving things by hand, and basically avoiding too much noise and making the pattern stand out. Just balancing out the details throughout the whole costume. Another thing that I was looking for, that main belt that he has, that's the belt that his base custom has. And that's the belt that the pouch and all the accessories hang from, so that one needed to stay in place. So then when sculpting the armor sets, it becomes a challenge of sculpting things around the one belt, but making it feel like it's grounded and that it belongs there. And it's not just, an afterthought.
Well, that's one of the big things too, like we had talked about, is like, how do we address those challenges? And because every team that goes out has to kind of keep that in mind, and hopefully all this stuff under the hood that we're kind of telling you don't realize, it just feels right and looks really impactful in the final design. And like that is, along with the artistic side, the technical stuff that the team needs to keep in mind.
Yep.
All right, Ref, I can go a little kind of quick through this. This was just an example on the concept side of expanding some of the characters. You want me to just run through this?
yeah, this is a good example just for what we go through with these characters and really flashing out, because we're showing kind of some of the final models here, but Della, you can go through some of these.
I'll just go through this real briefly. This is just a way that we kind of visualize that process that we showed you earlier. So starting out with really loose thumbnails and stuff, we kind of go through this. This was a new class called Einajar, and I'll just kind of go through and talk about. It's Odin's army. This was nice because we actually had mythology to pull from for these characters. We wanted them to be reflective of the Raven. In the mythology, they are chosen from the best warriors who were killed in battle by the Valkyrie to come to Odin. So we're designing a new class. We wanted something that, while humans felt equally as imposing as like we had the Draugrs and the Hellwalkers in the last game. So bringing those elements, a lot of times too, we'll look at silhouettes and stuff and see how that works across the board. We also have to kind of take like narrative stuff into mind. So some stuff that we thought too is maybe Odin breathes life into their bodies after they catch them or after they choose them. So he puts his hands on, breathes life, and it leaves this black mark, which actually creates a raven on their faces. And the idea that they are dead, so they have the pale skin, but the raven still reads on them. We wanted something, we knew we'd get them armored because we have to deal with a lot of combat stuff, and make sure that the accommodations for all the combat needs for a class like this, for a light, medium, large, elite, and then varieties all read. And then as we go to heavy, this is some work that Raph did, is really making sure that once we get a look for any faction, that it can expand throughout the entirety of the faction. We can't just have one design that works, but then can't really propagate. If you imagine you saw all those exact same characters running at you on screen, you'd tell right away that we didn't have the variety that we wanted. But again, like we talked about the 2D, 3D collaboration, and then Raph goes in and see how does that work and can really validate it. The nice thing about it is looking at it in 3D, and then we also will put the stuff in game to make sure that that holds up. Other things when we're working with combat is also making sure that within light, medium, heavy classes that we can get the variety we need there. You can see the Raven theme coming through here, so a mix of some of the classic Norse helmets, but still bringing those elements into these characters. And again, it works for the lights as well as the heavies. And then across to our elite classes as well. Things like this with the Raven motif and being, trained by the Valkyrie, that we start to see those influences, and their weapons are even more reflective of the Valkyrie. Again, a large part is also the weapons they use. We need to make sure that combat is supported and has the weapon variety that they can use and switch and try out what makes the best combat experiences within game. So even stuff like weapon design, and then mythical stuff too, like they'll have a power, and making sure that reads, like we talked about being small on screen. We want the clear legibility, because it's easy to design up close on the concept side, but then dropping it in engine to really see how that reads. And like we said at the end, we just want a character that you feel is impactful and imposing and a big threat. But that's a lot of the under the hood stuff that we go into. And so jumping into some more of the cast here. We knew Freya would be returning. Obviously, she was a huge character in the last game, and the way it ended, we find her, and a little bit of the design work here done by Raph and Shan was really looking at how she's been as a mix of revenge and grief that she's been facing, as well as she's been hunting Kratos and Atreus for 3 years, and reflecting that in her design. Raph, I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on this.
Yeah, just real quick, like this is a good example of things that we could use, especially beneficial for the 3D side of things, because we already had those models from last game. And once we're talking about kind of redesigning them for Ragnarok, a lot of things that we could pull from and the details that we grabbed from even Baldur's design last game. A lot of the, kind of the legs are very similar to what he was wearing. The necklace, you see, she has like this under armor, kind of like more battle ready, but still keeping what was iconic for Freya, because this should still feel like what she was last game. But again, a little more what Della described, like a little more of the storytelling within the design of how she's surviving and getting ready for the battle. And here, some of the work that I was able to transition from the models, as well as Eric's sculpt on her design. Again, that collaboration with Eric and the back and forth, very similar things, the attention to details, all the stitching, making sure my initial sketch was just to make sure she felt proportionally correct, and things kind of, the weight was there. But again, once you go to the details, you just got to really spend the time. There's no deep secret on tools that we're using, and I'm sure the crew is going to talk more about. So there's some specific characters that we had some tricks, but here it's a lot of just spending the time, detailing, making sure everything feels believable.
Oh, it's believable, all right.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's a historical detail.
I'm selling some art books over here is all I know. I'm giving links.
Yes, get the art book, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff that's coming out.
It's coming out end of the month.
It looks great.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
for
can't
the
wait to
textures,
share this stuff.
sorry.
Oh, Angie, sorry.
For the textures, we knew that Freya was going to be a big player in this game. So, she just went through a lot of personal struggles after the death of her son. So we wanted her textures to show that. I added a lot of wear and tear and stuff, and, a lot of scratches on the straps. But, there's a storytelling behind it. Like, we want you to feel like maybe she's been on the hunt for Kratos for 3 years. Maybe they've already encountered each other. Maybe they've already fought before. She hasn't just been sitting still. So all this comes across in the textures. Another thing I like to do for texturing is, if you can see, the legs are usually darker. So we usually make a gradient out of the characters so they can read better in game. So keeping the light and the attention and the upper torso on the face. Because our in-game camera, it's very cinematic. So we have to take into consideration when texturing our characters. For her face, it was a new model, new textures. This is just to show you guys the new makeup and tear treatment. Just figuring out how to make her look impactful and a badass, because she's a badass. Her tattoos were also done from scratch again. I hand drew the designs, and this let me have a lot of control. Also getting clean masks to be able to change the things in game. There's a point where her tattoos needed to glow, so we can easily control that in the engine. We also like to break up our missives, so it looks a bit more natural when she's in movement. A cool challenge with Freya was designing her skirts in 3D, because you want it to flow, you want it to feel like they're sitting on top of each other nicely, but at the same time, rigging needs to have a gap in between each layer so that the simulation works better. So it was a cool back and forth with rigging to try to figure that out. Another cool thing about Freya is that she's one of the few characters that uses tessellation, and we use that in her cape. So tessellation is something that we don't usually use in the characters. It's usually mostly used by environment artists. But yeah, we just wanted to steal that technique to put it in our characters to where it was most impactful. And the cape was a good thing to do it on. The seaming was way better.
Yes, PS5 only, but baby steps.
PS5 only, yes.
And one thing we do too is the attention to detail is in our main cast, as well as even the smaller characters. This was a creature Steven and Shan designed that we'd see in another realm called Vanaheim. And a lot of what we do really doesn't exist, so we don't have a lot of reference, but it's really great. The modelers kind of take advantage of that and run with it.
Yeah, so this one was a lot of fun to sculpt because there's no real life reference to pull from, as like the whole shape. So in things like this, you really have to use your artistic experience to be able to establish a look in 3D. For this one, I wanted him to look, like there's a speed and movement with all the directionality of the feathers and the fur. And overall, just make him feel aggressive and just make him feel like, you gotta watch out if you see this guy around.
Yeah, I love the way this turned out. The 2D doesn't always 100% communicate, so the way you guys artistically do that stuff that doesn't exist is great.
Yeah. And then, like, for the feathers, we usually, these are not the feathers that you are going to see in game. We still like to put them and hand place them in ZBrush, in the high poly, so we can see the feel and how the creature is going to look like. And then once it gets approved, then we bake a few feathers, and then we hand place again the cards for the game. A cool challenge with this one was Spiro. He had made another version of the Ravager before, and they need to share the same rig. So I took the body that he has sculpted and modify it for this concept. But then I also had to keep the neckline in place and the eyes and the jaw. So I had to figure out and solve the shapes in 3D while keeping those things intact. So that was an interesting challenge.
Yeah, there's always working within the limitations, so it never looks like it at the end. Another fan favorite was Brock and Sindri from the last game, and we see them again in this game. Again, we played up the idea with the Thimble Winter being in full effect in their costume work. And
the one good thing about these guys too is a lot of the work that we had to do to redesign their costumes, but also keep them very to what was iconic in 2018. And this is a good example of just the mobility, how we kind of switched his skirts and the armor to make sure the shoulders to make it a little more easier for rigging to, so for him to move. Like they're doing kind of climbing this game and being a lot more around. So we need to make sure that everything felt like they could move around. But again, we try to preserve as much as possible from what we had, and then resculpting what we had to make sure they felt like an evolution from last game. But we had to kind of work with a lot of what we had before.
And
you can
I like to say, oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I like to think that Eric used like alphas or like, fancy techniques to do all the patterning on his armor set, but knowing him, he probably hand sculpted everything.
Oh, wow. My mind is officially blown. That's hand sculpted.
Yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things, right?
Wow.
And we try to create patterns and then use the patterns as we see fit. And patterns is kind of a tricky thing for Norse. Like you think there's a lot of things out there, but we actually had to recreate a lot of patterns and look at other artists to help us create a library of things that we could possibly use. But yeah, a lot of ornate stuff on this character.
Just a heads up on time, you're at the halfway point in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Cool. I think if we go to 11:30 on this, and then we'll.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. So for the textures, we really were focusing on improving the metals on this game. We really wanted his armor set to shine, and like all those historical details that Eric got into the sculpt, we wanted to to be able to show and glow in the game. A cool challenge with Sindri was making giving him a lot of wear and tear on his costume to make it feel lived in, but also not crossing the line of making it too dirty because of Sindri's personality of being a clean germaphobic dwarf. So that was cool to work on. I also got to work on the hat that he wears in the snow. Also hand placing all the cards. I did do a try on doing cards in Next Gen, but there's just like something magical when you do something by hand. You have more control as to where the cards are flowing, and it just shows the handmade work shows a lot. Oh, and I like to point out the little detail in the tip, the zipper. We added the little anvil as the zipper pattern, so that was a cool thing to get the vibe as a blacksmith going.
Yeah, a dwarf is artistic, as Sindri would definitely have that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exquisite. Yeah, it looks really great.
And then, yeah, Raf, you just want to talk a little bit about Thor, and then we'll jump into the model?
Yeah, kind of real quick. And this guy, he made his rounds out there of his design. We really try to push what, kind of a different take of what was done before. A lot of the design inspiration for him was like some of the horns for kind of the ghosts that he has on the mythology. We pull a lot from the mythology to get inspiration for the hair color, kind of his weight and things that how he's talked about in the setas, and to make sure we had that style. But again, bringing our own take to what the character is, bringing that fantasy push and really making him iconic. Like we did a ton of exploration of what he could look like. Corey, since 2018, had a very clear idea of what he was looking for. And then Eric Williams, the director, also had a lot of input on how, kind of the decision making, how he should look. And there's a lot of cool stuff here for his design. And as we go into the model, you can kind of make out.
Yeah, it's always interesting designing too. Just a character that's been done so much in pop culture and by other projects, and given something that hopefully is a little bit of new take from the narrative that really fits within the story we're telling. Even the hammer, something as iconic as that was designed by Yefim Kligerman. Getting all those elements in there and then reflecting in the model.
And you can see here, like, kind of the back and forth in 3D as well. Like my initial sketch, then handed off to Eric for the final sculpt. And he really took the time to make things perfect here, because a lot of the pattern that I put was in 2D. You can kind of see it, kind of the raven pattern on his forearms, kind of a little callback to Odin's design. A lot of like the goats in some of the patternings for his skirt. Same thing, the goat design into the hammer. So it's kind of like we find the themes so we could play up, and we create patterns like that. So when we throw them into the character, everything feels cohesive into what the Aesir gods would use. Like you can get a lot of the details and colors from his sons from last game. So again, always try to bring that storytelling, and obviously the detail and the polish level and the sculpt is like top notch. Like I wouldn't expect anything less from the crew. This stuff is pretty awesome. A lot of the work that we put in is back and forth within the design, how we make things feel with the right scale. Like Thor is way bigger than Kratos, so the size of stitching, the amount of details that we put in certain areas had to balance out so he doesn't feel out of place. And kind of, I think that the result speaks kind of by itself. There's a lot of cool stuff happening with this guy.
Yeah.
Same thing for the hair.
I like the girth of the matter.
Well, yeah, that's part of it too. You want a character that represents thunder. That's kind of what we wanted in the background with that. Like Raph says, dealing with those themes.
Definitely bringing some thunder.
Yeah, that's definitely thunder,
Yeah.
among other things. The hammer too, bringing the hammer.
Yeah.
Right.
So the textures were, I had a lot of fun working on this one. He's a big guy. One of the challenges I had with this one was his design has a lot of layers. There's leather on top of leather on top of leather. So I had to figure out a way to make them, feel like they belong with each other and they don't fight each other. And, with a lot of hue variations and breaking up the gloss in different manners in each layer. At first I was doing the layers like more brownish, reddish tint. And, his art direction was to make him a bit feel like cooler hues, some more bluish. And I think it was a perfect decision because it makes him look more cohesive. It contrasts more with the hair, and when you put him in the environment, he just stands out. I think we're lucky to have an art director that's has a background in characters because the expectations are always really high.
Oh, look, he's making a little heart. Little mini heart.
By the way, Raphael Grissetti is the art director.
There you go.
Along with Eric.
You made a big heart there, like this. The kid taught me this one.
And another cool thing that we did with the leathers was adding like little hints of gold. It's something that maybe it's not hyper realistic. You don't find gold on leather, but just adding those little hints makes him look more special, feels more majestic. So it's a cool little trick that we did there. The tattoos were fun to work on. I kept the design flat in Photoshop and then used Substance Painter to wrap it around his body. And then, whenever we updated the tattoo design, it just would automatically update in Substance without having to redraw a lot.
That's really great.
For the skin, I got a lot of tips and tricks from Andrew that was making beautiful skin on other characters back then. So then I started adding like little tiny veins and little blemishes, things that you maybe you don't see right away, but they're there and you feel it, and it just makes it feel more realistic. Also, we added dirt to the nails of all the characters. It's just such a subtle detail that makes it feel just alive.
No, that's something we wanted with all the Azers. They felt dirty. There's a 1970s biker gang kind of feel to them.
Oh, I like that. That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, in contrast to the Greek pantheon, this is the direction that Corey and Eric both really wanted.
You can say that. I can't get it.
Louis, that one's getting closer to you.
That's getting closer.
That one's getting
right?
closer.
Okay. I'm going to just bite my tongue. I want to say something. I'm not going to.
So this image, Amanda Irani, she worked on our hair, a lot of our hairs. We got a good base started from outsourcing, but then she worked her magic in the game and made the character's personality come through with the hairstyle. As far as the texturing in the face, one cool tip would be to add a lot of hue variation around the eyeballs. So add lots of reds and blues and yellows. It makes the character feel more alive. I feel like with Thor, makes his eyes feel a bit more troubled. And when you see your characters, we want you to feel like they're about to talk to you, like they're breathing. So just whatever it takes to make them feel.
But capturing that detail really settles and dials in the personality for when everyone plays the game, you'll see how that's reflected, that kind of troubled nature. We wanted that just at first glance.
Yeah.
And then Rafa, you just want to go into tier. I think this is the last one before we swap.
Before you do the swap.
Yeah, we're going to have a swap.
Oh, yeah.
Under
We do it very quick. And again, all the things that we talked about, you can kind of see it replicate on all the characters. Like Tyr, there's a lot of backstory to him on 2018, like him traveling to different cultures, different realms, and being more of a traveler. And again, we wanted to play up the different than Kratos, where he is the god of war, and we knew that Tyr was going to be a little more on the kind of the reserved side. So even his armor, there's he's wearing like a jacket, but also like very distinct from what Kratos. We didn't want any comparisons at all to what Kratos represents in the game. And this is a good example of inspiration that we bring from the environment side as well. There's a lot of tier related structures in 2018, and you can kind of see hints of that, of him kind of hiding his old gear, his old armor underneath a lot of layers, and some coins from different places, and the tattoos as well. A little bit of the different cultures that he represents. So a lot of cool stuff on the design, and the final model, again, collaboration between me and Eric. And I feel like it speaks to the quality that we put on these characters. Again, these are just a very brief showcase of what we did on the game. The art book's coming out, like we said. You guys can check out a lot of cool stuff, and the next guys are also gonna blow your minds with some cool creature stuff as well.
This is the guy right here for me. I mean, Wow, I'm just in studio.
It kind of looks like you, right?
It does. It definitely does. That one's definitely.
Let me know
We have the one that looks like Paul coming up.
Raphael.
Oh, great.
You know, let me know when you need me to come over to the studio in Santa Monica and sit tight. We're gonna have it.
We need some bandits, someone to kill.
I've been working out a
There you
lot.
go.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the scan. I'm ready to be in the game. Here we go. Well, guys,
We'll make it happen.
I think we're going to do a transition, and let's give them. You and I can give them a clap. That is some stuff right there. We're going to transition.
Do you have any
We're
other
gonna have,
slides before you do the transition?
We're going to
No,
add.
I just wanted to mention one last thing.
Yeah,
please,
go
One
ahead.
last thing.
please, go ahead.
I think a cool advice for texture artists, like if you really want to be a good texture artist, you should become good at storytelling. Like have like all your textures, tell a story of why they're there, have everything with a purpose. And
Wise words coming from Angela Rico here. We are so happy that you said that at the tail end of this this presentation because it's really important. Raphael's waving goodbye. Are you waving goodbye or you want to say something?
I'm not a part of the second half, so I just want to thank you guys, and I'm sure they're going to kill it. But yeah, play the game if you guys haven't played it yet. There's a ton of stuff that we are not showing because, like, we try to keep it. We're still very early, so we want to keep it very, small for the fans that wanted to play it and experience it themselves. And yeah, get the art book. We had a lot of fun, and I think the work that the artist made is amazing. So thank you guys. I appreciate
Oh man, are you
guys
kidding? I was
having
going to
us.
bring it back to you and tell you on behalf of all of us here on the ZBrush team and the Maxon global team as well, we want to thank you for participating in the ZBrush Summit 2022. Looking forward to seeing you again when you come back to America. And again, to quote Paul Gabry, it is what number? 10. It's a 10. But we've got, we're going to add Andrew Arisa and Josiah Scholten to the mix. So don't go away because it's not. We're not ending this. We're continuing
we're on
the
the
magic
second part of
yeah.
this presentation for sure.
We're going to do God of War Continues. So
Yeah, it's going to continue. I've also been sharing the deluxe book as well. There is a deluxe version.
where are you sharing this deluxe book?
I've been putting in the chat. Like I said, I'm slinging books over here. I'm trying to help out with the books. Because honestly, looking at some of those pieces is like, that could go on a wall. That could go on a wall. That could go on a wall.
What were they saying in the chat, by the way? I'd just like to poke
They're
at you.
super impressed with all the details that have been coming through with the work that they've been doing there. And I think it's really cool to be able to see them collaborate. And it really, like I said before, I think it makes the game, even if they want to continue the franchise and do another one and do another one, this team, obviously you all can see, is very close. They're very much working off each other, and then they know the stories of all the characters and everything else as
You
well.
keep mentioning the details. I think it's fair to say that the details are the highest level that we've seen in years, and I think people are really finding ways to push it. It's really fascinating stuff to watch. And it looks like they're
just getting adjusted.
They're just getting adjusted here off to my right. And are you excited? That one dude really kind of did look like me, didn't it?
It did.
It could look like
It
me.
did.
If I continue down this,
There was a lot of Louis,
if I
couple
continue
possibilities
down this
in there.
trajectory, it could
Right.
look very much like me. I'm still youthful though. I mean,
So look who's joined us here.
wow, taking it on here. Andrew, am I saying your last name correctly, Aritza?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Thank you so much for correcting me if I'm wrong, but I'm glad I was right. Ha! And we still have Della Longfish here.
You're saying that one right too?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's important. And we're also going to welcome to the stage now for the first time today, Josiah Scholten.
Hello.
Guys, thank you so much for being here. Again, if you're just tuning in now, we're with members of the God of War team, Sony Santa Monica, so graciously here to spend their time with us. And off to our stage left is Angela Rico, who is very
And
gracious
then
in her
Raph has
last.
left us as well.
Of course, I'm coming to that too. I was going to say she was very gracious with that last minute tip. That's the one thing to keep in mind is the tips. I'll hand it over to you guys. Raphael has gone back to do his thing in Brazil, but on to you guys for the second part of our Sony Santa Monica presentation. Go ahead.
Right on. Yeah, we'll get right into it, and we're looking at some more characters in the cast, and we will start off with some of the work from Josiah and Andrew, and go into some details of the making of. So this was another character, Angerboda. Again, this is nice because we actually got to pull from mythology for this character. One of the things, too, I think that we look at when we're designing a character is, I think when you think of coming to work on a game that deals in so much fantasy, like a God of War title, it's the big monsters, the big creatures, the huge fantasy. The other side of that, though, is we are designing costumes and trying to get the subtle details in a character that has something that's more historical based or designed with inside the silhouette and getting a little bit of that nuance and subtlety to still make an impactful design when you take away things like the silhouette change and all those elements within a character. But let's jump right into the models.
Yeah. So when I see a character like that, I see a lot of bells and whistles and pieces, and I like to mentally go through a checklist and break it up how I'm going to tackle a complex thing like that, and so and keep a couple things in mind. So yeah, I usually try to focus on readjust here. I usually try to focus on where the most detail is, and so in this example, like usually focus on the face and the torso, and really nail that down before moving too far along. And also thinking about where can I reuse certain pieces around the whole character and what kind of motifs there are. So in this case, she's got a form-fitting outfit, so I want to keep that in mind when I'm not getting too crazy with big armors and stuff like that. And then also the snake motif that we worked into the design. So from her arm to her medallions to the brooches, all that kind of has that working. So on the next slide. So yeah, in the face, we like to spend a lot of time. And in this case, we actually started from an actress scan of the voice actress, which was super cool and very helpful, but we still always like to modify and adjust things to fit the concept and fit the final in-game look we're going for. So it's not just like a one-to-one scan and then you're done. We still have quite a bit of work to do. And especially when sculpting faces, I'd like to point out it's super helpful to look at it at really drastic angles, because there's some forms that look great when you're looking head on, but then the second you rotate, you're like, oh, it's a little weird, or like look at a very harsh top-down angle to get the cheeks and the mouth feeling good.
I think that's also that attention to detail that works, because this is, again, something that's not scary or frightening, but add a little beauty and elegance, and that subtlety that you get in every inch of that is good.
Yeah, and so we wanted to, especially on the face, because that's obviously a lot of the character, is keeping that elegance and that energy there, even in a neutral expression. So super important. And then on the hair also, we usually do a workflow where we block it in, which we've talked about in ZBrush, and then kind of go through the process of getting outsourcing and other teams to help build that hair, and then do a final polish pass on it.
Yeah, the hair's got a lot of comments going on right now.
The hair's phenomenal.
Yeah. I'm like, look at that hair.
Man,
Yeah.
my hair look like that?
So you block it out in ZBrush, and then
Jeez.
Yeah, do a bunch of tubes in ZBrush and
Yeah.
like some Dynamesh to get the idea going, and then rebuild it in the low poly, and then do a final pass. Sometimes using ZBrush even to polygroup and move around the cards themselves, because that can be easy sometimes.
So that's all cards still.
This is like essentially a couple tubes and with cards kind of stuck into the tube.
Right.
So a couple layered tubes to get the effect, and then some cards on top of that. So yeah.
Yeah, and that collaboration, even in something like this, is still there too, like you said.
Looking good.
Outsourcing and internal,
Yeah.
kind of.
Absolutely. And then for some things like the cloth, it's important that we put a lot of work in the high res most of the time, just to kind of prove that it's going to look good in the game. So things like the cloth tilers, I'll always put on there on a layer or something to get the idea going. And then it's always important to add a little extra detail and juice where you like kind of rip up some threads or like have a little variation so it doesn't look too static.
And you did a really good job on that too. Like I think sometimes we walk the balance of a costume feeling too fashion forward, but I think that level of detail and wear that we kind of set up with the historical detail in the style guide is super evident here. And
Yeah, a lot of people are asking if you guys are actually putting the details sculpturally in all the clothes and everything else.
So the answer is yes, a lot of the time, and then we might take it back out when we do texturing, or kind of like tone it down, and then use tricks like tilers and you know, smart materials and stuff to get it back in.
Are you hand sculpting the cloth, or is it you doing marvelous?
It's pretty much all hand sculpted. Actually, all hand sculpted. Yeah. So
There you
I
go,
tend to work pretty traditionally, where I actually model it in like a low poly plane,
Yeah.
couple layers, and then subdiv it up, and then start adding in that detail. So it's kind of a little slow process, but it works. So
Slow and steady, apparently.
It looks good, so you're doing it.
Another high five between Paul Gabriel. That's a 10.
And then on the shoes, same example. I like they're very kind of intricate and overlapping forms of the leather at the bottom. So again, I went in and actually modeled it so it worked how I wanted it, where there's overlaps exactly how I want it, so I don't have to, you know, fiddle around trying to get it to work.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
What do you like? Where do you get reference for those things? Because
Oh man, Della, you did the concept for this, huh?
yeah, so we went back, and like Ralph said, with the historical details, we really looked at how shoes were made and worn. So we found a lot of stuff pre-Roman, or like even like pure cultures of the Norse at the time and historically, and then see how they made shoes and bring it into it. And that's always the coolest thing for us, is seeing something that's completely different than what we're wearing these days. And you know, that attention to detail pops out, and even though you may not see all of it, we want you to be left with the feeling that everything has that kind of sense to it. And we think it stands out as a team, and then the result in the model, I think,
it looks
kind
great.
of
It's very
validates that.
contemporary as well. I'd wear it.
Not a shock.
Not a shock at all. Kidding? I'll go back and look at it one
Free
more
pair
time.
comes with the art book.
I got the art book on
I
pre-order.
think you guys found another cosplayer over here.
Holy smoke.
So obviously, we got to get this thing in the game at some point. So this is the final in-game model. And like I said before, we kind of tone down and tone up some of the parts of the high res to help get the texturing going. And yeah, there's actually a lot of tweaks after the fact, right? You get the model, and then it inevitably gets a little flatter and a little less form. So you got to go back in and pop it back out. So after all the bakes and everything are done, it's good to do a pass and kind of accentuate certain areas.
And even evaluating these in the environments with the color
Yeah,
palette.
absolutely. So like in her example, she's in a very orange and warm environment most of the time. So we noticed that early on, like, hey, we should have a cool color palette to help her really pop out, because she's also pretty quick. So
Yeah, I think the initial color palette, since she was a giant, was more yellow, and while it looked good in the concept, it would disappear in the environment. So you can see where the team brought the blues to complement and bring that forward.
I think the color choice is really working there.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
Really great.
And then yeah, the hair, like I said before, took a lot of work to get finessed into place, and there were quite a few people who worked on that. So shout outs to Angela and the outsourcing team also.
And then we had a new class of character, which was a cave dweller. This was a little bit different than some of the other characters. These are some sketches by Stephen Oakley. It's interesting dealing with a character that doesn't have the one-to-one relationship to the mythology. So Stephen ended up doing a wide range of explorations on this character to really make sure that it felt right within the cast of the other characters.
That'll keep you up at night, yeah.
Again, there's a lot more in the book if you want to take a look there when that comes out. But then this was handed over to Andrew.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really enjoy working with the VizDev department is this. We always have this conversation. It's like a very synergic workflow that we have going on, and working with my idol, Stephen Oakley, was definitely an amazing experience. So shout outs to him. How do we approach creating a creature like this? So I think, as we have mentioned during the presentation, one of the things that we do from the beginning is create a very basic model, and we put that guy into the engine as soon as we can. We are trying to find what silhouettes are going to work, what colors. Maybe it's maybe too early for that, but we are trying to make sure that what we are creating in the VizDev is actually going to make sense in the gameplay. And on top of that, you get a chance to sort of like see animation, show it to the other teams, and they can kind of grab from what you are working on. So that's extremely important. So working on these guys, of course, we had this extremely huge catalog of drawings and little concepts and doodles and all this type of stuff that Stephen was making on the side, and we started like trying to translate that into a model that actually felt cohesive, and starting to research real life references to enhance that detail. Some of the ideas that you can see on this slide, for example, is that we started like thinking and understanding what the design team was doing, the animations, how they were looking, and we started like wrapping our heads on how we make sense of the abilities that these guys have. For example, you see the hands on the claws on these guys. They tend to climb to walls and kind of sneak up behind you and attack you. So a lot of that is, again, kind of grabbing and referencing not only from stuff from the outside, finding creatures and finding animals that you can use and bring to the concept, but it's also like trying to understand what the other teams are doing. And I think we can keep going with this one. And a lot of this comes from understanding, and this is a very highlight that I have here in my notes, is that understanding what the other teams are doing. And that conversation doesn't have to be straightforward, or it can just be you sneaking on what they're doing and kind of grabbing from what's happening in the other departments. So when you see the environments, you can use that as reference to put some details in your sculpt, kind of bring some of that dirt, some of that, like I said, biological representation of the capability of these characters. So
Yeah, 'cause I know too you were pulling a lot of references from, you talked about frogs. and
yeah,
those
exactly.
elements.
That's another thing that we do a lot. This character is supposed to be like a vermin that is invading many of the realms. So one of the things that we started looking into was not just grabbing from reptiles and amphibious life. We started like going into rats, for example, and you can see some of that on this character. And you can see a little bit of a lich type of approach, and you see all these teeth inside his mouth. And even on the eyes of this character, you see a little of a golfer, kind of like a rat looking eye, and we end up making it whiter and not necessarily black because we were trying to make this character pop.
That's one thing I think
yeah.
you did really well too, is you took all those influences, but none of them dominated
Exactly,
too. Like you
yeah.
get the feeling of all those kind of characters in there without it just feeling like a fraud.
Yeah, it was definitely like a long back and forth with Raph and with Steven to sort of like dial down things and push others. So we end up with a character that looks pretty much like nothing else really, but is grabbing references from.
And I think that's part that the team works really well with too, is designing stuff that doesn't exist. You can't just go to reference for this, but you still want it to feel believable. And that's it's not for everyone. Like it's stepping into that unknown. It comes with its own challenges, but the team is always great under the leadership of Eric Valdez too. Is like that excites them. Let's go see what we can kind of make out of this.
That's why I like art books. I'm an art book collector.
Are you really?
Yeah.
This guy letting the secret out of the bag.
It's great that we get to kind of share this here, but the nice thing about the art book too is we've gone into, and Dark Horse really broke down our thoughts and approaches to that, because I think we're a fan too of just what went into designing all this.
Yeah, they make great products, by the way.
I like art books because I'm like, what am I going to search online? I'm stuck. I don't know where to go with this character.
That's what you're searching in Google. I'm searching.
No, I'm saying I can pull a book off and I can cycle through and get some inspiration from other artists. I'm like, that's a good idea, and go.
No, that's,
I like it.
That's why we're saying some of the stuff under the hood on how we approach
Yeah.
this stuff, because every project similar has a.
Yeah, and when Andrew's talking, I could totally see the eyes. I immediately went to him. That was awesome. Yeah.
You know what? I would be remiss too. What else you can do is read books. More
Okay,
books.
thank you.
Yeah, read more
I prefer
books.
pictures.
I'm just.
So,
Hey, Fab.
talking about a little bit of a struggle, I remember working on these characters and sort of like trying to find what their skin detail should look like. And I work a lot with Raph. We were kind of like bouncing ideas and working on these guys. I remember sending the model to Raph. Raph did something, sent it back to me. We like kind of started that exploration and trying to bring these characters' skin to life. So we started pretty much combining reptile and amphibious life, but the thing with amphibious, for example, is that if you try to find a scan data for these guys, you're gonna realize that they are pretty smooth. All of these ideas that we have in our minds is a combination of like hue values and little small wrinkles and the fluids, this disgusting stuff that they probably have, and we have to exaggerate a lot of that. We grab also from the concept that Steven did, and from there we were just pretty much like kind of developing a very specific look for these guys.
Yeah, and I think also just with the cohesiveness of the characters in the world, stuff with the skin I know that you did is kind of like Tier, where it pulled from the concept work that Luke Berliner and his team did. Same thing when we first see these in Svartalheim, we looked at the reference for the environments that they had created and brought a little bit so they felt like they had that consistency across them.
Absolutely. And again, if I remember correctly, for these guys, we were doing a sculpture for the most part. I think we rarely went back and used a photograph that we transformed into an alpha and we brought into ZBrush to use it around. For the most part, we were just grabbing what we were sculpting, like using the tools that we have at our disposal and kind of trying to save time. But for the most part, it was a very like hand work for the most part. Yeah.
A lot of handwork, I'm hearing.
Yeah, definitely.
No.
And going to the textures, I remember these guys being a little bit more greenish towards the yellowish, and it goes back to, I think, what the team has been talking about during today is that we are trying to make art look beautiful and badass, but at the same time, we are making a game. We are trying to work and focus our efforts towards making a smooth experience for the players. So that's something that we are pretty much kind of like balancing all the way throughout the process, and I feel like it's extremely like special in the work that we do at Santa Monica is that we are trying to work together to accomplish that goal. It's not just animations, it's not just cues in the UI to prompt players to see what the character is going to do. It's also like in our hands to contribute to that ideal.
But even in the texture work here, you can see the highest contrast is in the eyes and the mouth, the things that are becoming coming at you first. We want to really make sure like that is the primary.
Yeah, and that belly color just brings you right
Yeah,
up.
all that goes into consideration.
And to that point, talking about the belly color, that's something that, for example, like we talk a lot, and I work with Eric in many of these characters to sort of like find a difference between the back and the front of this character seems like a very simple and kind of silly thing that you will not think. Maybe it's just a design choice, but it's also, we are thinking about the gameplay. How do we know that the character is coming towards you or is going away? That is like what
Good point. Yeah,
the thought process behind this type of decisions. And of course, we are artists. We are trying to make these technical and gameplay decisions look amazing, and that's kind of like the challenge that we always have to deal with.
Yeah, always in the back of our head is the idea. If it just looks pretty but doesn't play well or work for it's not a success. So that's something.
Look,
that
I'm in the game too.
Oh, stop. Here we go. What a guy. What a guy. I can't believe he said that.
And of course, from all these amazing catalog of ideas that Steven created and grabbing from the environments, I think we had the need to create a family, a trio of these creatures to sort of make a set of different abilities and sort of like different types of attacks.
Yeah, this is a faction like the other one. Like they had the variety, but still felt like they kind of all existed.
Exactly, and we were going for like something that, this guy is yellowish, this guy is greenish, but the shape and kind of like the hints that we have, like Della was saying, we are trying to highlight certain areas depending on what attack this guy is capable of doing. I think on this guy, for example, we have an emissive mask that pops out of like nowhere, that kind of hinting that this guy is about to attack. So there are a lot of stuff that we probably are not showing necessarily here because it would take too long, but there are a lot of these different decisions that we are making throughout the process. And again, these are the Grims.
Yeah, again, another new faction that looks fantastic in the game, and we always kind of want to make sure they stand out.
It's really fun to work on that, yeah.
Oh, they're standing out all right. It's really
awesome.
Good.
So obviously Brock and Sindri were a fan favorite and a personal favorite of myself too, but they were really just the tip of the iceberg. We knew that in this game early on that we'd be going to Svartalheim, which is the realm of the Huldra. So we'd see more of the Huldra there. So this is a character called Durlin. You can see some sketches from Stephen Oakley and the kind of 2D collaboration that Raph did here.
A great drawing.
Steven's awesome.
Yeah,
He's so
really
good.
great drawing.
Yeah, and Steven is fantastic. A mile a minute. It's like 300 drawings a day kind of thing. And in a
300 drawings a day.
In a project that just has like stepping in the unknown, it's just a wealth of ideas that Steven brings. But we wanted to make a dwarf in Durlin that could hold his own visually and have that impact as a character from the writing side that Brock and Sindri did. He's completely different than them, so we wanted something different. But still kind of opens up the world on what we had just kind of touched on with Brock and Sindri.
Yeah, so I got a chance to work on this guy, which was awesome, because like you said, Steven does 300 drawings in a meeting, let alone a day. So yeah, this guy was awesome. I like to break it down, like I said, so he's got a lot of pieces, and I loved the design because each thing kind of contributed to his story. So like from the scroll, he's a bookkeeper, and so like the scrolls to the ink pots to the pen, even his friend Diener, who's the little squid thing you saw, all of it contributes to like what he does as a job, and also kind of backstory on who he is as a person. So yeah, so unlike some of the other ones, he wasn't started from a scan. It was like a contribution of Raph doing a block out for the concept sketch that you saw in 3D, and then I took that and did the final like high poly one. So for some stuff like the pores and things like that, using just like a base scan we have of just a random person was super helpful just to get those little tertiary details in there. But then I went in and like basically resculpted all the primary and secondary forms to match what we want. And another important thing is like you saw in the concept, he's got a little bit of an expression, and it's important that we have expression in the face, like with the wrinkles and the shape of everything, but not too much because we are going to actually add that later. So we got to keep it kind of neutral, which was a good balance of like making sure he's interesting even without doing anything, as a face. So, and adding all the scars and the wrinkles was super fun. So yeah, on him, he's got a lot of pieces too, but it's important to note that like the stitching and all the details are kind of large because he's so small, right? So like, you see him next to Thor or somebody, he's like, he's a tiny little guy. So you gotta make sure that those details are large to read, not only for baking, but just like as a gameplay thing, like we've been harping on the whole time, You gotta keep that in mind. So for the jacket also, that was super fun, because like I said, I do stuff just subdiv modeling mostly, and then add all those details after the fact. So I actually UV'd that whole strip that has the pattern on it, so I could swap it out if we want to with different concepts or different designs, which is always useful, especially for like the leather straps and things like that. So
It's looking awesome.
Yeah, and then there's a shot of some of his accessories and things like that. So
And the materials too.
yeah,
You get the variety and the
yeah, for sure. Breaking up between like the velvet jacket and the leather sleeves, and then the cotton and leather combo is really important. So again, we like to put all that detail in the high res file just to get a sense of what it's going to be like in the game.
Yeah, that's just another great example of you're designing something that is kind of smaller silhouette and what you're doing, and that detail inside can really still get that visual impact as something as big as a dragon.
Someone
Yeah,
says they see a little Danny DeVito in this.
They want to see a little Danny DeVito. It's always sunny somewhere. Come on. Sunny in Burbank right now,
Go for it.
exponentially sunny with the shine that these guys have brought with them. Look at the little
And then-
details on the back, that
Okay,
little
we'll go back.
backpack there. Look at that, look at that.
Yeah, it's important, like Andrew was saying, like,
Wow.
Characters aren't only seen from the front, so focusing on every single angle. So even hiding in little, things that people might not even notice, like the key in the pouch and
Yeah,
maybe what's in the
just saw
pouch,
that.
and things like that.
It always gives a sense of history that we like to do, and our fans will pick up on all those details, so it never goes unnoticed, which is
It
really
does look like Danny DeVito.
Yeah, we do love to keep everything story focused and like have all those little details in there because we're assuming someone at some point
Right.
will catch
It's
on.
for the fans.
Yeah, it's for the fans.
For the fans, yeah.
That's exactly why I make buttons in ZBrush. It's for the fans.
And
do it
another
for the
thing
fans.
for texturing, I feel like it's important to keep track of these characters have a lot of patterns and a lot of details, right? So you want to focus on like reusing what the patterns are to like not only make the character more consistent, but to save yourself some time. So even things like the shoulder straps, I reused on the boots to give it a little more extra excitement all over the character. So yeah,
Hey, it looks cool.
yeah, and that's how he turned out. So yeah, it was fun also with again color palettes. You gotta have the mix of those greens and the reds to help him stand out in his shop that he's in, and also compared to the character he's with all the time, which is the little squid. So that squid's more of the purple, cooler tones. So we like to mix and match like that.
And then obviously within a God of War cast, we have a wide range of characters and creatures, and so this is one of the creatures called a knock-in in the game that the players will run into. But definitely wanted something that is kind of a little more spindly, hanging out in some of the swampy areas, so you can see some of that reflection in there. This was done by Shan, and Bjorn Hurry also helped with the initial concepts on this character. But it's fun getting the cast of characters, big and small.
Yeah, so this is probably the scrawniest guy in the game, and he's also tiny. So he crouches a lot and runs around, so that's important because when he's in A pose, right, it looks like a lot of empty areas, right? But when he's crouched and in the game, his elbows and his knees and his head are all kind of like next to each other. So you have to keep that in mind when you're sculpting, that, how does he work and how does he animate? And this
Do
was
you
super
do
fun.
animation tests to see it?
Yeah, I did some.
crouched
I usually
for
do some
yourself?
pose tests,
Yeah.
and we rely heavily on the gray mesh phase, where we kind of get something quick, right, like a day or two, just to get it in the game and see what it looks like.
You guys say gray. Are you just using Madcap Gray?
We
in
say
ZBrush?
gray mesh. There's still some colors and stuff in
Okay.
there, but it's just a quick thing.
It beat me to the punch on that one. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe they're using.
Well, and it's funny
Trying to help
too.
out the chat.
Yeah. Hey.
Well, it's interesting too. Like some of the other characters, like Josiah was saying, we evaluate to make sure they pop from the environment. This character actually had a different thing. We wanted to kind of fade into the environment and be a little harder to find when the player.
Yeah, so when it's crouched, it almost just looks like it can blend into the leaves and the stuff in the background a little bit more. And this was super fun because, creatures are always fun. So doing all the skin details and getting the anatomy to still shine is always important. And then I love to just like get a little heavy-handed with the details and then pop the anatomy back out with just a standard brush or something to make sure you're not losing all the forms, because it can easy to get lost sometimes. Yeah, and same with like the wrinkles on the neck and all the scales popping out. It's just going in there and making something cool and trying to do it the concept justice, and also give it that kind of unique feeling where I'm not just stamping the same scale over and over again. It's like each one's a little bit different. That way the character, you might not think it's a big deal, but if you see the difference, like it does feel a little more natural to actually go in there and do that.
And from one of our smaller characters to probably one of our larger characters, Garm is in Norse mythology and looms large. This was our take on this. This piece done by Carl Lindbergh for Garm, and realizing this character was really fun. Obviously, from the legends, he's been bound, so this is kind of the take on what he looks like, and Andrew had picked up the design from here.
Yeah, it was such a such as, a lot of responsibility to bring this character to life, especially with these amazing concepts that we receive and kind of like the ideas behind it. I work very close with Raph to sort of like understand what was like the general take that he wanted to kind of portray with this guy. But as you might be thinking right now, scale. That's like the main thing with this guy. So in order to accomplish that, we kind of had like a little list of elements that we wanted to make sure were in this character from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So one of those things that we thought about a lot was we had to make sure that this anatomy can hold up for all the challenges that we were going to encounter with this guy. It was something that we needed to put together to make sense of how we were going to start placing all these alpha cards, which is probably one of the things that people's going to be talking about a lot, and how we can like transfer this information to the rest of the team. Riggers needs to understand where are the joints. Animators probably have their ideas and they contribute a lot to the whole process of like realizing the shape of this character. And that was actually one of the challenges working on this guy, because we were not just scaling up a regular wolf, and that's it. We were actually making decisions in terms of like the size of the paws and the posture and kind of the shape of the whole character. And that's something that started from the concept art and we were really trying to put into the model.
Yeah, that's something I think you did good too, is it's not just a one-to-one scale of the wolf. I think we're adding elements where it's still recognizable totally as a wolf, but we get a little bit of that mythical take to the character. And I think, like you were saying, like all the details, and even one of the challenges with a character like this is the player scale.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to make sure that all this detail was going to actually be used somehow. And in order to make this actually work, we had to start looking at a lot of rather disgusting pictures of sicknesses and skin wounds and stuff like that. And we actually had to look a lot into all type of canine animals, like wolves, from wolves to hyenas, and even our own doggies at home. I remember Raph even sending me pictures of his dog and kind of like showing her teeth and trying to tell me, yo, we need to make sure that we have this type of transition and we would like to make it look this way. And I was doing the same on my own. We're kind of studying our pets to sort of like bring a lot of that to this character. So it was also like something charged with a lot of love, because it was kind of inspired by our pets. But
and part of that too is like, that is what, when Andrew was doing this and in the concept we thought about is like, this will be, what do we see at player scale? What will be attacking? Those teeth are coming in the claws, so really making sure that the frequency of detail was kind of in those areas that made sense to the camera for the player. And
that connects a lot with the decisions that we took in terms of performance, because we were trying to also make sure that, all this sculpture was going to actually hold on into the final model. So we had to sort of like balance these things out. So the texture resolution probably in the back of the character is not as high in the front, but we are just trying to make sure we are, using the memory that we have and the performance that we can handle in order to like make justice to what we were trying to accomplish with this guy. So those are the front paws, and these are the back paws. I think that's the way we can call them. And yeah, once again, a lot of references coming from real life. We try to exaggerate that. And one of the things that we tried to do with him, talking about a little bit back to the anatomy stuff, is that we wanted him to feel nimble, and that's something that Raph was really like really focused on. We need to make this guy feel agile and fast. But how do we, on top of that, make him feel heavy? So we start putting a lot of like that detail on the skin itself, so you can sort of like feel the weight of this character. And we have a lot of audio cues and how this guy is extremely crazy. Hopefully you guys will be able to experience his savageness in the game. But yeah, these are another shots of the studies and analysis that we were doing in our research with our pets and the photographs and stuff.
So it's Raph's dog, apparently?
This is probably Raph's dog.
Even I'm learning something about
It's a footnote in the book.
And of course, at some point, we started to covering a lot of that anatomy that really served a lot of the the purposes and objectives that we had, like I said, transferring this information, the anatomical references and the joint positions to the rest of the team. We start covering that with a lot of cards. And to be honest, I really don't have a magic trick here to the way we did it. I do remember using a little bit of fiber mesh to do a first pass on the body, but for the face and to actually get to this result, it was a lot of handwork, pretty much. Like it was just a matter of really placing the cards where they're supposed to be. This is a shot of the pass.
And even seeing the chains and all the elements that bound him, which hints back at the gameplay stuff, and
exactly
making sure that reads.
Exactly. So again, with the alpha cards, it was a matter of like actually making sure everything is following certain directions. So I remember like grabbing references and even drawing lines with poly paint on top of this guy and kind of using that as a texture to place the cards in the direction they're supposed to go, to kind of have that flow. If you grab your dog and you start seeing very up close the way the fur kind of flows around their face, it's a very specific pattern, and we were trying to make sure that happening. And on top of all of that, when it comes to the body, Raph had the beautiful and amazing idea to also like have little scars hidden in there. So we have like bald patches, and we have a rope that is wrapped around the. So there was no other chance just to make it by hand, and we had the time, and we actually focused a lot of our efforts towards that, and this is the result. It took me quite some time, but I think we did that.
Yeah, and then kind of in contrast to these characters that we're fighting against, there's other characters in the world that we want to kind of build out and make sure not everything's here to attack and kill you. And hopefully the aim of that is that it still feels magical, and there's areas you want to go back. In the first game, we did this with Charlie, and we have some other characters in this game with characters that could be on your side and help you depending on the circumstances. So a mermaid, one of the challenges with this, like a lot of the other characters, is types of these characters have been done a lot in kind of by other properties and subject matters. And again, doing a little bit of a take on this that hopefully reads nice for all the aesthetics that we've set up in the storytelling. This was done by Raph with a brief kind of the color and scale paint over by Shan, but was a really unique character.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work to kind of balance in, and I think that's the word that sort of like summarized the entire process with her. Raph's concept was pretty spot on what he was trying to do with this character. So it was a matter of actually making all of that beautiful colors and sort of like little details make sense in the sculpture. So like I was saying, it was a lot of like back and forth between the huge amount and heavy patterns of scales and little details to at some point starting to smooth things out and sort of like find like again balance between these shapes and solve certain areas, just not with the smooth surface but with a little bit of like a pattern. I remember, for example, on the belly area towards the bottom, this image that you guys are watching right now, we for example, we went and started skewing and kind of modifying a wave, like a photograph of a wave of water, like something just dropping upon, and using that we started putting noise on top of that. That's something that we did using Photoshop, and we brought that into ZBrush. We put that wave in there, we put some noise, we put it back into Photoshop, but it's trying to find a specific, like kind of like a watery pattern, like a wave, but at the same time it's sort of giving these characters certain personality into the skin.
And that's a nice way to also, I think, you and the team brought a lot of like gesture into the interior design of the character, which is something that was really key for her.
Yeah, for this character in specific, it was extremely important because I remember, for example, we had conversations about, okay, we are going to bring this pattern here. We probably can lay down the UVs in ZBrush and sculpt on the UVs, and maybe then we go back to the model, and that's going to make sense. But end up being extremely heavy. We were trying to make something that I think the word that Raph and I used a lot was elegant, something that feel smooth, some detail here and there, but it feels like a dress. That's like the whole thing with this character. And again, one of the things with this one is that in contrast with what we do for an enemy, this character we were trying to do something for a cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
So we at some point we had the idea of like the camera being super up close. Things changed down the line, but all of this detail at some point becomes extremely useful. And
yeah, that's a nice element too, like a little bit of variety. We don't have to take all the combat considerations in, and it can focus on the look of the character and how they'll act in the cinematics.
Exactly. And here, again, another challenge. Let's sit down and start texturing this character. Raph had a couple of wild ideas on what he was looking for, and he actually painted some stuff that you guys can see here. And then I grabbed this thing again, and we were trying to, for the most part, fake some sort of like translucency that you find in some goldfish and some ballerina fish that you kind of can see through them a little bit, and we did that with diffuse. That's pretty much, we were painting this stuff.
Yeah, and the body, yeah, and even the stuff in the face too, which is really nice.
Yeah. This character evolved a lot, and we kind of like play a lot with the values on the materials, like the metalness, the glossiness. We are trying to make sure that on this specific scene, you can see this character at its best, So
yeah, every inch of the character, I think you put that attention to detail in, which really pays off in the end. And then finally, the last one we have here is the Allfather, Odin himself. This is a character we thought about in the first game in 2018 and knew 100% he would be making an appearance in God of War Ragnarok. And we did a wide range of explorations here. It's a piece I did. We wanted something that stood out from the rest of the Aesir. We wanted each of them to look different. This is a character that fights and interacts very differently than the other ones, and it's something new for Kratos to encounter, in contrast to Thor and Baldur and Magni and Modi. But we wanted a character, too, that pulled from the mythology, the wisdom, someone who was cunning and manipulative, can cut you with a word as easily as you can with any weapon. This was the final design, and in the art book there's more that we can kind of show the exploration of that. But then Josiah and Raph had helped on this.
I was going to say, I loved getting the sculpt from Raph because he did pretty much the whole outfit, and I just did some polishing on top of that. But it was really cool seeing how he set up all the details on the shirt, and then the hand sculpted cloth and stuff feels pretty natural, and it's very cool. And then I did the head and the hands also. Again, started from some scans because this also is based on an actor, so we got a great starting point on that, and then kind of adjust and adapt based on the story and the character. Add the classic eye patch in and all the awesome designs.
The scans, some of the work you did there with the eye patch.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah,
Cut you
he's
with a
awesome.
knife or a word.
And yeah, story-wise, like you want to make sure that it feels like what we want the character to be. So not 100% friendly and not 100% evil. Like maybe a manipulative guy, and can't really tell what he's thinking all the time.
And even I know you did a lot in the pattern work too, but you could see the raven motif on his shoulders add a little more ornate elements. And I know when you came to the gold stuff too, that there's a bit of royalty in him, but still feels like he exists.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the thing that Raph did on the outfit, he basically blocked in all those patterns on a flat plane, because trying to get all that to work in 3D and then also sculpting on it can be a bit of a nightmare. So think smart and plan ahead. So like he did all those designs and patterns on a flat thing and then wrapped it around to match the outfit, which saved a lot of time and looks great. And because of collaboration, you got to keep in mind like different techniques and things like that, because then I went in and added the ravens and some other parts after the fact, and I had to match the style that he did. So learning that and sharing it with your coworkers is super helpful.
Yeah, that collaboration and just being economic at the same time, because we do not have all the time in the world, but that's a smart way to approach it. Like Josiah's mentioning, is something we try and leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the fabrics, like I said before, we love to add all that stuff in the high res, even if we end up redoing it in the low poly, because it just looks cool, and also it's more fun. So yeah,
incredible. It doesn't look cool.
I'm almost
Details.
speechless.
Yeah. So for the fabrics and things like that, again, it's just some planes subdivided up, sculpted on, and then alphas, and then a little polish on top, because like you never just want to drag something out and leave it as is. You want to go in and add a little nicks and scratches and loose threads and like make it feel hand worn, especially in this game where everything is kind of handmade.
And that's part of the trick too, is taking something that's as a subtle silhouette as this character and adding that detail so it still has that visual punch that you want with the character.
Yeah.
It's always easy to push the silhouette, but then working inside of that is also a nice design element that the team focuses on.
Yeah, and same with the ropes. We, you know, you want to see the ropes and stuff in there, but then we remake them in the low poly because it has to be a tiling mesh and things like that, tricks like that to get it actually running in the game. But it just looks cool in ZBrush, and we love to try stuff out and see how it looks.
Yeah, and even elements in the costume like the ropes were hints from the mythology. Odin had made sacrifices to gain his knowledge, and so we put some of those things, like the elements of the rope actually come from some of the tales.
That's awesome.
They look great, even grayscale, they look amazing. I mean, it's really something to behold.
And then for the final in-game, there's a lot of clear distinction between blue and gold in his outfit. So it's really important to keep it from looking too flat. You want to make sure there's a lot of breakup. So even in the gold, it might still just look like gold, but there's a lot of values in there to keep the right things popping out, like the ravens, keeping them like as a focus, so that even if you're not thinking about it, subconsciously you associate it with the character. And
so did you inflate it a little bit more? Is this what it looks like? Did you inflate the raven?
So it's a little bit glossier, and it's a little bit brighter in the diffuse also.
Yeah.
And then it is a little bit more inflated too. So like, since I added that actually after we had already finished the character essentially, and we went in and tweaked that a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I had the control over like popping it out. And
I definitely noticed it. I definitely noticed it.
You did. You had an eagle eye there. Not a raven's eye, but an eagle eye.
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
My pleasure.
And then
You're all
for
We're here all week.
Just one eye.
and then for tattoos, everybody's got tattoos in this game. A lot of fun tattoos. And in this case, it's actually really awesome how they designed it, where his ravens are actually represented as his tattoos. So not only do they have a lot of cool features in the game, they also every single inch of them like means something in the story. So we're very careful with that kind of thing. And then same with his face tattoo. Super fun to work on. I actually love doing some stuff like that with poly paint and ZBrush and just turning off pen pressure, because then you can just get some really sharp graphical edges and
That's cool, yeah.
paint all day, which is
Good
super
advice.
fun.
Yeah, and the tattoos are also a visual nod back to our most tattooed character, Baldur. Since this is his father, we got that connection between the father and son. And as you'll see with the last couple of games, father and son relationships are a big part of the themes throughout the game.
Yeah. And then also for, especially for the graphical read of the character, and in a couple scenes, he's got a cloak on. So that's important to kind of follow through with the same elements, where you have the gold patterns and things like that on the cloak also. So whether he has it on or off, you still get a similar read, but then a different silhouette, which is really cool. And same thing, like we did that all in ZBrush, and then you do a lot in the texturing stage to get the same details to pop through and become interesting. So
Yeah, and that was, again, making sure we have some presence in the character, but when we stood him up against the entire family of the Aesir gods, that you could see that he was the one in charge and the father of that family, but still had a bit of those through lines. Like the greens that you put in there go back to Magni and Modi and even in Thor. But yeah, just making sure as a set that they read good, so we're not designing everything in isolation.
yeah.
Beautiful.
It's phenomenal work, guys.
So we just again want to say a big thanks for letting us come here and share this work. It's been great for us, all the years of work, and to show a little peek about what it is from the modeling team, again led by Eric Valdez, and amazing work. And so we just want to say a big thank you, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate you being here today to show us all of those fantastically detailed models and assets from the world leading. I mean, it's an institution at this point. Paul Gabriel's nodding a very, very succinct nod. He says, a little grin, and even making a small sound, he said.
I'm going to taste salt in the morning. That's all I know. I'm going to cry on my pillow. Can't sculpt anything like that.
Oh, here we go. Let's take a look. Paul Gabriel's got some people that have been smashing questions, I'm sure. You want to take a few questions? Is that cool?
Well, there was a lot that came through. I was just letting them get through that was the big 400 slides. They're like, just don't say anything. Let them get through the 400. Once Raph dropped, there's 400 slides. They're like, let them get through the 400. Don't say anything. So, yeah, well, I think you guys answered a lot. A lot of people were asking about the details. You guys were pushing the details and actually putting the details in, sculpting most of that stuff in there, painting, figuring out ideas as well. So thank you for sharing so much. That was incredible. I know a lot of people are taken back how much detail you guys were putting into these characters and thought process in them. So there was a lot of really great stuff that people really enjoyed that you shared. So And the books were shared multiple times in the chat, so we'll see.
Oh, hey,
Hopefully.
You put the link to the place to purchase the book?
There's a bunch of links. There's two, right? There's the deluxe version.
Yes.
It looks like, and then there's a regular. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting the deluxe one.
Christmas is around the corner.
That's right. Your birthday's almost up.
That Thanksgiving gift.
Birthday and Christmas. You get a double gift.
One of them,
Holy
or just
we know what to put. We know what to put on your desk at the office.
There you go. Yeah, I'm excited. Like, there's even more images in the book than what you were saying.
Yeah, we
breaking
go
down.
through the whole cast and share that work, and similar to here, the aim with that is what we're trying to do is also just walk you through what it goes into making this and sharing that information, because we face all those same design challenges and learning that and what really goes into making games.
Here's two quick questions for you that I saw coming through multiple times. How much time did you guys really get for each character, would you say, in general? And what was your polygon count limits for the hero characters, let's say?
You want to go in?
Well, we always try to keep things as low as possible because it is a game.
Sure.
We do want to keep it in there. So we try to optimize certain areas as much as possible so that the other ones we can keep high, right? Like things like the faces and the beards, stuff like that.
Beards are very important, as you can see.
Yeah. So we try to keep it, in that area, and like a lot of the hairs are around like 50,000 to 100,000. It can go wildly different
For just
depending
the
on
hair.
character.
Yeah.
For just the hair, and then some of the characters can be 100 or 200,000. Like it's kind of all over the map. There's ones like the Nokken that are really small though.
Yeah, we'll probably prioritize too the character, like something like Kratos and Atreus will have more of that, depending on how much the presence is in the
And
game.
how many UDIMs and multiple meshes do you say?
We usually have between 5 and 10 like different sets of UDIMs basically. So some characters, but again, it's all over the place. So some characters like the Nokken, like a small thing that's just an enemy, can only have maybe 1 or 2. But then things like Kratos can have.
Try and get Angel to
up
come
10.
back on the stage.
You can get her to come back.
Angel,
Come and
get back
stand
on
over.
the
What are you
stage.
doing?
Come back on the stage,
Angel,
Angel.
come on.
Let's welcome her on.
Yeah, bring the chair. Bring the chair.
Bring that chair in here. Okay, here she comes.
Okay. And then how much time you guys were getting?
When it
do you
comes to
think?
the
I know,
time-
Andrew, you said you were working
Magic
quite a
of the
while on the
Matrix.
one. You got quite a bit.
Yeah,
of
so
time.
when it comes to the time we put in on these characters,
There you
really, one thing you can just throw out there is just say 2 months around that time, but it's not really 2 months. We go a lot into modifying these characters down the line, depending on what the gameplay aspects and whatever need comes out of the blue, and it's like you can easily say that these characters take the whole production. Like we are going back to them, we are tweaking things, we are making sure things actually like run well in the game. So
Yeah, and I think some of that too, though, is maybe some of like the final detailing and stuff too. There's obviously, like Josiah said, a limitation of making the game. We have to be responsible and economic about how we do this and what makes sense. There's always a little bit of give and take on that. So depending where we are on the schedule, that's a huge consideration, making sure we hit those deadlines.
I got one.
Okay, go.
Conceptually speaking, when you're designing that stuff, do you sort of, which one maybe stands out to you as one you were very, very happy with? If you could point the finger at one. And then I'll have another question for you as well.
Well, Atreus, obviously, like I said, I had worked on him in the 2018. That was nice, creating a brand new character. And then in God of War Ragnarok, seeing him grow and putting that attention to detail. And I've worked closely with Raph and especially Eric Valdez in the office, like all those little details. And, I feel confident, like, with everyone that's working on it, we all equally care about the characters as much, and especially a lot of love for Atreus. We feel like we've kind of grown with him, and like I said, for me and Eric and Raph all feel like proud parents of our boy.
So that one, because of the transition you've seen across the design time.
And seeing how he grows and the narrative stuff, and then a secondary character for me is Anchor Boda, which I got to design a lot of, and again, who has a connection with Atreus throughout the game that the players will see, but that design was really special, and dialing in on one of those was fantastic.
Okay, it's good to get that. See that? We got an insider track right there.
Okay.
And then how many pages is the book? The deluxe edition, of course, because apparently someone's getting it for his birthday and Christmas. Not both birthday and Christmas. You get separate gifts. That's horrible.
I didn't see the number of pages.
Now, how many pages is it?
I don't know. I gotta see if I can see if it says.
Yeah, we tried to pack a lot of goodness in there, and working with Dark Horse was great, and the writer Amy was awesome. We could have made a book 5 times as big.
And it's already how many pages? 600 pages?
I don't.
645 pages.
It's growing.
I'm getting a lot of email messages, and
I don't see. It doesn't say how many pages.
I think we're at 2 something in there in that neighborhood. Again, what we want to do is just show a little bit of the process the team goes through on that.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. What's the distinction between the deluxe edition and the regular humanoid version?
I think it comes in a very nice
Yeah, it
box.
comes in a super nice big blue box with
Made of wood?
a work.
Like a
you know,
balsa wood?
It opens up. There's some artwork in there.
You're
as
kidding.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the big difference that I'm seeing.
Has it
so
got a
far.
poster in there for the office?
It's not poster size. It's book size. Opens up and has a nice piece of artwork.
But there isn't a poster in there, is what I'm saying.
I don't know. I don't see one.
Does it come with a T-shirt?
So we'll see down the road. Maybe we can do a
lot of
little
questions.
signing or something somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There you
Yeah.
go.
Well, it's beautiful. I say first for those that really enjoy this artwork, I think the art book is definitely a must get, especially for someone like me that likes to collect art books too. It'll be on my shelf. I
Appreciate
will say
it.
that much for sure. So I couldn't thank you guys again.
Oh, man,
Coming
that
out,
was
taking
something
time out of your day. You know, it is the middle of the day for people. It
I want to
is.
ask him another question.
Okay, Lou, you got another question?
I'm full of questions. I could
Okay,
sit here and
go.
talk to you all day about these things. This is open to any of you. One challenge that you had to overcome in the making of this, again, a seminal hit game, to get to the point of being rated 10 is a lot of sleepless nights and energy. What's one challenge that you overcame that you think is something you're very proud of as you walk away from this project now that it's complete?
Oh, okay, I'll go. One of the things that I learned is to really care for the characters that we work on. You know, you guys were talking about the timeline that we get from production, but, you know, one thing is the days that we get. But another thing is, you know, when I play through the levels to polish stuff, I see things that could be better, that I could have, you know, made better. So I will, like, you know, sneak some time to bring it back, fix something, and then put it back into the game. And next week, I'll be working on another task. And then I would still, you know, try to fix as I go, like maybe coming on a weekend to, like, you know, just try to get more polishing done. So, you know, it's a cool experience to be able to just, you know, care so much for your characters that you don't get, you know, stuck with only the deadline by production, but you just go, like, the extra mile. So.
Okay, yeah, I can tell that. And you had that.
The viewers saw that too. I can tell you that from the comments. They saw all of your passion that you guys put into this project. They saw it in what you guys were presenting and what you were sharing.
They could feel it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no.
I can feel it
multiple
sitting
times
here with
people said it. You can see the passion they have
For sure.
these characters and what they did with
Even through the digital space, floating in the ether of the internet. We've succeeded at translating that passion that you have. Anybody else have something that they overcame or a challenge that
Well,
was...
I would say in general, I
that.
think this is something that everybody, I think, experienced a little bit, and we have talked about that stuff, is that coming from Santa Monica releasing this amazing game that everybody respected, and the guys did such an incredible job, we get into this new challenge of actually, you know, making something that, you know, can be next to this masterpiece, as many people call, and, you know, stand proudly beside that incredible product. So jumping into this was, you know, that idea was in our minds all the time. Like, we need to make sure what we are doing here is gonna, you know, be what the fans love and what is gonna be the best we can do. So I think just like Angie was saying, we were going back at things where we really didn't have to go if we were in another studio, and this is probably not trying to knock anybody, but we were really in love with what we were working on, and we really tried to go all the way in.
And I think part of that we deal with too is, you know, not necessarily thinking what this will be at the end, but making sure during the process that we've put all our effort into each piece that we did. So however it goes out and is received, we can walk away saying we did our best. And I think that approach kind of gives us a little bit of that freedom to let's just focus on these characters, and then the rest of it starts to gel as the team comes along. And then the great thing that I love is every step of the process adds to a character. We're very early on where we get to sit with the writers and the art direction with the design, but then when it hands off to modeling, it adds so much. And then we see the animation and the voice acting and the effects, and it becomes, on the concept side, it's like we helped plant the seed, but then what it grew into is because of collaboration from all the other departments. And it's like that is even a grander character and effect than we had initially thought in the beginning. It's because the work of everyone on the team is really putting in that hard and their best into it, and the result thankfully shows. And Raph kind of helps really cultivate that culture, and I think the results are really based on the work that he's put in there for the art department.
Yeah.
That's significant.
I'm going to say on every single character, like learning to collaborate and trust and rely on your team, because not a single one of those things you guys saw was made by one person. You know, every single one was a whole team of people. So jumping around and like learning from each other and then also growing as an artist is always super key. So
That's excellent. That's fantastic. Words of wisdom. I think the other thing too is working on such a huge property could be a real source of energy. Would you agree that that's something that helped you to get across the finish line and know that that was pushing you as you went along? You're like making history with this thing. Everyone knows it's going to be great.
I'd say like the energy that our fans have is fantastic. They've been continually supportive from the last game to this one. You know, there's just like in everyday life, there's ups and downs that you go through. But on those long days, I would just pop on a YouTube video of our fan and just seeing the reaction. And like we've mentioned, they pick up on all the nuance we put into that, and that enthusiasm like amps me up again to jump back in and know that that'll be kind of seen by everyone out there. So I love the enthusiasm our fans have, and it helps inspire us as well.
Well, that's the driving force here. The enthusiasm of the fans seems to be what pushes us all. That goes doubly for the ZBrush development team and everyone, working with Maxon across the globe to push the products, to make them the best products so that people like yourselves can use them inside of the pipeline and bring the fans even greater heights of detail and realism and a game everyone can be a proud sort of participant in, whether they're playing the game, whether they're sort of fans of the franchise or helping to make the stuff. I think we're all sort of in bed together making an impact in a very positive way. And for you guys at this particular junction, the number of the day was what? 10. So I'm going to take the shackles and swing them in another direction. And I want to say an emphatic thank you. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us.
It was
Thank you.
incredible. Paul Gabriel, any last words for these guys before I send us off?
No, just thank you. I know I've been talking to them for a while about putting this together, especially 1 week after the game.
Very gracious.
They were in meetings with us while they were getting ready to deliver the game. So seriously, thanks.
Oh, and thank you. It was a great experience.
Raph, if you're still watching, thank you, man.
Raphael.
And Eric, we missed you.
Love you, man.
Yeah. we
So,
missed you.
on behalf of my compatriot Paul Gabriel, I'd like to say thank you formally to Andrew Arizza, Angela Rico, Della Longfish, Josiah Scholten, and from afar, Rafael Grassetti. Muito obrigado. And everyone else watching around the world. This was a presentation of the highest magnitude with members of the God of War team. If you haven't played the game, please do so. It's a winner. 10, as they said, is the score that people are giving it around the globe, and we give it a 10 as well from an art standpoint. Sit tight. We're going to be doing some giveaways with my friend here, Paul Gabriel. He loves to give away this kitchen sink. If you're watching still, stay tuned. He's going to give some stuff away, but I thank you again, and we'll be right back after this with some giveaways. So thank you so much, guys, again. Take care.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.